The planet Zephyros was unlike any other world in the galaxy. Its sky shimmered with two suns, casting pale gold and soft blue light across the towering crystal cities. Strange, glowing plants stretched toward the sky, their leaves humming faintly as the wind passed through them. Rivers flowed like liquid silver, and the forests were dense with trees whose trunks pulsed faintly as if alive. For most of its citizens, Zephyros was a paradise. But for Lyra, it had always felt like a cage. Lyra had scars. Long, jagged lines that ran across her arms, her back, and the side of her face. They were the result of a childhood accident, a falling crystal shard that had pierced her body during an experiment gone wrong. Most people could not even look at them without a shiver of disgust or pity. Children ran from her in the streets. Adults whispered behind her back, and even her colleagues at the academy treated her with polite coldness. She had learned to move through the city like a shadow, silent and careful. When she walked through the crystal streets, she always kept her head down, avoiding the gaze of strangers. The academy halls were no better. Professors praised her work for its precision, but never for its creativity. Her peers admired her intellect from afar, yet none dared speak to her as an equal. Lyra had grown used to solitude. She spent her afternoons wandering the outer forests where the soft hum of life and the gentle glow of the trees felt welcoming, almost comforting. She liked the rustle of leaves under her feet and the quiet whispers of the wind. Out here, the world didn't judge her. The creatures of the forest paid her no mind, and for a while, she could forget the sting of rejection. One afternoon, as she walked along a familiar path lined with silver-leafed trees, she noticed something unusual. Smoke rose in thin curls from a clearing ahead, and a strange metallic scent filled the air. Curious but cautious, Lyra crept closer. There, amidst the thick foliage, lay a human ship. Its hull was scratched and dented, and it rested at an odd angle, as if it had fallen from the sky. Humans were rare visitors to Zephyros. Most citizens had only heard stories about them, stories of strange creatures from distant worlds with remarkable courage and unpredictable behavior. To find one here in the middle of the forest was astonishing. She crouched behind a tree, watching the ship. Movement caught her eye, a figure stumbling out from the wreckage. He was tall, with brown hair and eyes that shone like polished amber. He moved with care, wincing with every step. His clothing was torn and his skin had faint scratches, but he was alive. Lyra's first instinct was fear. Her people had always been warned to avoid humans. They were unpredictable and often dangerous. Yet something in the man's posture, the way he moved with careful determination despite his injuries, stirred something else in her, a mixture of curiosity and empathy. Slowly, she stepped forward, keeping to the shadows. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The human turned his head, surprise flashing across his face. "Yes, I think so," he admitted, his voice calm but strained. "Can you help me?" Lyra hesitated. Her instincts screamed to run back to the city, to leave the human to whatever fate had brought him here. But her heart, scarred like her body, felt a pull she could not ignore. "I can help," she said finally, moving closer. "Come with me. There's a safer place nearby." She guided him through the forest, supporting him as they walked. Each step was careful. The forest was dense and the ground uneven. The human stumbled several times, but she kept him upright, her hands firm but gentle. Once they reached a small clearing near a stream, she asked him to sit. The human lowered himself carefully onto the soft moss, wincing. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I didn't think anyone would come." Lyra shook her head. "I'm not like most people," she said simply. She glanced at his injuries, scratches along his arms, bruises forming on his legs. "These are serious. I can tend to them, but it will take time." He looked at her curiously. You are not afraid?" She studied him for a moment, considering the question. "Fear is useless," she said finally. "It will not help either of us survive." The human nodded slowly, then extended a hand. "I'm Elias," he said. "Lyra," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. The next hour passed in quiet concentration. Lyra cleaned his wounds using a mixture of crushed forest herbs and water from the stream. The human flinched a few times, but he did not complain. When she finished, she bandaged the deeper scratches with soft cloth she had carried in her satchel. As she worked, Elias noticed the scars on her arms. He did not flinch. He did not look away. Instead, his amber eyes softened with curiosity and understanding. What happened to you? He asked gently. Lyra froze, not used to anyone asking in such a tone. Usually, questions about her scars were cruel or mocking. But something about this human, his calm voice and kind eyes, made her want to answer. It was an accident, she said finally. A crystal shard fell during an experiment, my people. They see scars as weakness. They hate them. Her voice wavered, though she tried to keep it steady. Elias listened silently, nodding as she spoke. Then, without hesitation, he leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on one of her scars. A simple gesture of respect. Lyra's breath caught. No one had ever shown her kindness like that. They are not weakness, he said firmly. They are proof. Proof that you survived, that you are strong. That is something to honor, not hide. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt seen, truly seen. Her scars, which had been a source of shame and pain, felt different, like marks of resilience rather than failure. She looked at Elias, searching his face, and found only sincerity. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. No one has ever said that to me. Elias smiled faintly. Then I will keep saying it as long as you let me. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Lyra realized they needed shelter for the night. She led him to a small cave nearby, hidden behind hanging vines. It was not luxurious, but it was safe, and the air inside was warm and dry. As they settled in, Lyra felt a strange comfort. For the first time in years, she was not alone. The forest, the stars above, and now this human companion made the world feel less cold. She and Elias spoke quietly, sharing small stories about their lives, learning about each other. Lyra spoke carefully about her studies in crystal energy manipulation, the experiments she had worked on, and the ways she had tried to innovate despite the judgment of her peers. Elias spoke of humanity, of distant worlds, and of the endless curiosity that drove humans to explore the stars. He shared stories of courage, of mistakes, and of moments when humanity had surprised even itself. Lyra listened, fascinated by the tales, and for the first time, she felt that perhaps there was more to the universe than the narrow judgments of her society. Night fell completely, and the forest glowed softly with its natural bioluminescence. Lyra lay on her side, watching Elias doze lightly. She thought about her scars, her isolation, and the strange twist of fate that had brought a human to her forest. Perhaps, she mused, strength was not defined by appearance or acceptance. Perhaps true strength was found in the courage to care, to help, and to see value where others saw only imperfection. As the two slept under the faint glow of Zephyros's twin moons, a quiet promise lingered between them. They had met by chance, two beings from entirely different worlds, yet somehow their paths had crossed for a reason. And as Lyra drifted to sleep, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. The next morning, the forest seemed alive in a different way. Sunlight filtered through the silver-leafed trees, casting soft moving patterns on the mossy ground. Birds with translucent wings flitted from branch to branch, their calls echoing like music through the dense forest. Lyra awoke early, careful not to disturb Elias. He was still asleep, his chest rising and falling steadily, his face relaxed for the first time since she had found him. She quietly moved to the stream to fetch water. The soft trickle of the flowing water felt calming. As she filled a small container, she noticed small plants she had never seen before, their petals shimmering faintly in the morning sun. Zephyros was full of surprises, and she always felt a quiet thrill discovering something new, even in the forest she had wandered for years. When she returned to Elias, he was awake, stretching his limbs carefully. "Morning," he said, his voice hoarse but warm. "Thank you for saving me. I didn't think I'd wake up." Lyra smiled faintly. "You might have been stronger than you realized," she replied. She offered him water, which he took gratefully. He looked around the forest, his eyes wide with wonder. "This place, it's incredible," he said. "Your world. It's beautiful." Lyra nodded. Most people do not see it like that. They are too busy judging what they do not understand. Her gaze fell briefly on her scars before she looked back at him. You do not judge me." Elias studied her face for a moment, his amber eyes thoughtful. "I see you," he said simply. "Not your scars, not your accidents. I see you, The person who survived, who cares, who chose to help even when it was hard. The words struck Lyra deeply. She had never felt this kind of acceptance. Her people treated scars like marks of failure, but Elias had turned them into proof of her strength. She felt a warmth inside her chest, a feeling she had long forgotten, the feeling of being understood. Over the next few days, Lyra helped Elias recover. She taught him about the forest, the plants that could heal wounds, the ones that were dangerous, and the strange symbiotic creatures that lived among the glowing trees. Elias was eager to learn, his mind absorbing every detail. He asked questions with patience and care, and even when he stumbled or made mistakes, he laughed at himself instead of growing frustrated. Lyra was amazed by his resilience. Humans were different from anyone she had ever met. They made mistakes, but they did not give up easily. They found solutions in unexpected ways and used their creativity to overcome obstacles. Watching Elias, she felt a spark of admiration she had never directed at another being. One afternoon, they were collecting herbs near a shimmering pond when Elias noticed her scars again. "Lyra," he said softly, "may I ask about each one?" She hesitated. Usually such questions were cruel or curious in a way that hurt, but his voice carried respect, genuine interest, not pity. Slowly, she nodded. He sat beside her on a rock, careful not to touch her unless she invited it. "I want to understand. If you do not want to talk, I will not ask." Lyra took a deep breath. She began with the largest scar, the one that ran across her arm. "This was from my first experiment at the academy. I wanted to study crystal energy. I miscalculated the energy flow and a shard flew at me. I survived, but my people saw it as failure." Elias listened intently, nodding. "It does not look like failure to me," he said. "It looks like courage. You were learning, trying something no one else dared. You survived something dangerous. That is strength." Lyra felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever described her scars this way before. She explained the others slowly, each with a story of survival, of mistakes and lessons, of danger faced and overcome. Each time Elias responded with admiration, asking questions about the details, the feelings, and the lessons. Then, as he looked at the largest scar again, he leaned forward and kissed it lightly. Lyra's breath caught. It was not a romantic gesture, but one of respect, acceptance, and connection. "These scars tell a story," he said softly, "and I am honored to hear it." Lyra felt tears in her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. She had carried shame for so long. For the first time, she felt pride in her survival, pride in who she was. That evening, they built a small fire near their shelter. The flames cast flickering light across their faces. Elias told stories of humanity's adventures among the stars, how humans traveled to distant planets, faced unknown dangers, and yet always sought understanding and friendship. Lyra shared stories of Zephyros, its history, and the experiments she had conducted in the Academy's labs. As they spoke, a bond grew between them. It was not instant friendship, it was tentative, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Yet it was strong. Lyra felt an unfamiliar sense of hope, the first since her childhood accident. Over the next few days, their bond deepened. Elias learned to move safely through the forest, guided by Lyra's knowledge. In turn, he taught her new ways to analyze crystal energy, showing her methods humans used that were different from Zephyros's tradition. They discovered a rhythm in their work and their companionship, a harmony neither had experienced before. One morning, while examining a rare plant with healing properties, Elias stumbled. A sharp crystal nearby cut his arm. Lyra rushed to him, cleaning the wound. Elias winced but smiled faintly. "See? Even humans can get hurt." Lyra shook her head, smiling. "You are stronger than you realize. You did not panic. You stayed calm. That is what matters." He looked at her and said softly, "You are teaching me as much as I teach you. You are patient, clever, and brave. And your scars, they show all of that. You survived and you still care for me. That is remarkable." Lyra's heart swelled at his words. She realized that strength was not only survival. Strength was compassion, understanding, and the courage to act even when others turned away. She began to see her scars not as marks of shame, but as symbols of endurance and empathy. But their peaceful days were not to last. Word of a human in the forest spread quickly. A group of Academy officials arrived, their faces stern. "Lyra," one of them said, voice sharp, "what is this human doing here? You know it is forbidden to harbor outsiders." Lyra felt a flash of fear but also resolve. She stood tall, placing herself between Elias and the officials. "He is injured," she said firmly. "He is not a threat. I am helping him because it is the right thing to do." The officials scoffed. "The rules exist for a reason. Humans are unpredictable, they bring danger. You must bring him back to the city immediately." Lyra shook her head. "I cannot," she said. "He has done nothing wrong. He is learning from us. He respects our world. He has shown courage and understanding. That is more than many of our own people have done." One of the officials stepped forward, anger in his eyes. "You are risking everything for a human. Do you think your people will forgive you?" Lyra's gaze did not falter. "I do not seek forgiveness," she said. "I seek to do what is right." The standoff lasted hours. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Lyra and the officials argued. Eventually, the officials left, warning her of consequences if the human remained. But in their absence, Elias turned to Lyra, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You stood up for me," he said quietly. That is courage beyond measure." Lyra smiled faintly. "I am learning from you, Elias. Humans see value where others see weakness. You remind me that strength is not only survival. It is the will to act, the compassion to care, and the courage to stand even when others judge you." Elias reached out, taking her hand gently. "Then let us continue learning from each other, together." Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she did not feel alone. Her scars, the judgment of her people, the fear and rejection, they mattered less. What mattered was the bond she had found with Elias, the shared understanding, and the courage they both carried. In the quiet of the forest, they sat together, their hands intertwined. The soft hum of the forest surrounded them, the light from the twin suns casting long shadows. And for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to imagine a future where she was not judged for her scars, where strength was measured by compassion and courage, not by appearances. The human and the alien sat together in silence, two beings from different worlds, united by trust, respect, and the beginning of something extraordinary. And as the night fell, the glow of the forest reflected in their eyes, marking the start of a connection that neither of them would ever forget. The forest around the small clearing seemed quieter than usual that morning. Even the wind, which usually rustled the silver-leafed trees with a gentle hum, whispered softly, as if sensing the tension building. Lyra had woken early, her mind restless. Ever since the Academy officials had threatened her and Elias, she had known that their peaceful days could not last. Yet she refused to leave the human behind. Elias, now stronger and more confident, was gathering herbs near the stream. He had recovered enough to walk without assistance, though a faint limp remained from the earlier injuries. "Lyra," he said, looking up, "are you worried about what will happen if they come back?" She paused, kneeling to inspect a rare plant for healing properties. "I am," she admitted, "but fear alone cannot guide my actions. I must do what is right, even if it is difficult. You have shown me that courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite it." Elias nodded. "Then we will face it together." Their moment of determination was interrupted by a sudden rustling in the bushes. Lyra's instincts sharpened immediately. The Academy officials had returned, their expressions stern, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Lyra," the lead official said, his voice cold, "we warned you. This human cannot remain here. You must bring him back to the city or face the consequences." Lyra stood tall, her scars visible in the sunlight. She did not flinch, though her heart pounded. "He is not a threat," she said firmly. "He has harmed no one. He has shown intelligence, bravery, and respect for our world. You judge him without understanding. I will not abandon him." The officials exchanged wary glances. One of them stepped forward holding a device that pulsed with light. "Then we will take him by force if necessary." Elias stepped forward beside Lyra, his posture calm but firm. "We will not resist without reason," he said. "But we will not leave either. You will see that I mean no harm. Judge me by my actions, not by fear." The standoff lasted for what felt like hours. Lyra and Elias remained calm, their bond evident in the way they moved and acted in unison. Finally, the lead official spoke, his tone a challenge. "If you truly believe this human is worthy, then prove it. Show us that he can survive the forest storm of Zephyros. Only then will we reconsider." The forest storm was legendary. It occurred once or twice a year, a natural phenomenon where powerful winds, lightning, and falling crystal shards made even the bravest citizens flee for safety. To face it was dangerous for even the most experienced explorers. Lyra looked at Elias. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked. Elias met her gaze. "I do, and I am ready. We will face it together." The officials left, warning them to report back afterward. Alone again, Lyra felt a mixture of fear and resolve. "We must prepare," she said. "The storm will test everything. Your strength, your intelligence, and our ability to trust each other." Over the next few hours, they gathered supplies. Soft cloth to protect their bodies from falling shards, herbs for healing, and sturdy vines to create makeshift harnesses. Lyra explained the forest's dangers in detail, the weak branches that could snap under pressure, the areas where crystal spikes were most likely to fall, and the safest paths to navigate during high winds. Elias listened carefully, absorbing every detail. His determination impressed Lyra. Humans were clever and adaptive, and he asked thoughtful questions about strategies and alternatives. She realized that his resilience was not only physical but mental. When the storm arrived, the forest transformed. Winds howled through the trees, shaking branches violently. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the forest in bright flashes. Crystal shards, dislodged by the storm, fell unpredictably, creating hazards that could seriously injure anyone. Lyra and Elias moved cautiously, their harnesses securing them to sturdy trees where possible. The first challenge came quickly. A large branch broke under their weight, sending them sliding across the mossy ground. Lyra reacted instantly, pulling Elias out of the way of a falling shard. They both landed safely, hearts racing, adrenaline surging. "We must keep moving," Lyra shouted over the roar of the wind. "The storm will not wait." Elias nodded, scanning the path ahead. Using his human ingenuity, he found a narrow channel between two crystal formations that shielded them from the worst of the wind. Lyra followed his lead, impressed by his quick thinking. Hours passed as they navigated the storm. Rain began to fall, mingling with the wind and making the ground slippery. At one point, a large crystal shard fell dangerously close to Elias. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him to safety. He looked at her, eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," he shouted over the storm. "I could not have done this alone." Lyra smiled, even in the chaos. "Neither could I," she admitted. "We work better together." As night approached, the storm intensified. Lightning struck nearby trees, causing them to splinter. They sought shelter under a dense canopy, using vines to secure themselves against the wind. Despite the danger, Elias remained calm, his focus unwavering. He assisted Lyra in reinforcing their temporary shelter, using human techniques she had never seen. By midnight, exhaustion had set in. They sat huddled together, listening to the storm rage around them. Elias placed a hand on hers. "You are incredible," he said softly. "Your knowledge, your courage, you are stronger than anyone I have met." Lyra's chest tightened at his words. "And you," she said, "have shown me that courage is not only about surviving danger. It is about kindness, understanding, and the will to act when others would turn away. I have learned from you as much as you have from me." The storm began to subside slowly as the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon. The wind calmed, the rain lessened, and the crystal trees glimmered in the soft morning light. They emerged from their shelter, weary but victorious. Before them lay the path back to the city. The challenge had tested them both, but it had also strengthened their bond. They had relied on each other, combined their strengths, and proven that trust and understanding could overcome even the most dangerous obstacles. When they returned, The Academy officials were waiting, their expressions cautious. They had heard of the storm and knew that only the most skilled and courageous could have survived it. The lead official studied Elias carefully. "You survived the forest storm," he said, his voice tinged with respect. "Perhaps you are not the danger we feared." Lyra stepped forward. "Elias is not a threat. He has shown intelligence, courage, and respect for our world. Judge him by his actions, not by fear or appearance." The official nodded slowly. "Very well. We will reconsider our stance. But know this, such trust is rare, and it must be earned continually." Elias looked at Lyra, his eyes warm. "We have earned it together," he said, "and we will continue to prove it." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. The storm had been more than a test of survival. It had been a test of trust, courage, and understanding. They had faced danger side by side and emerged stronger for it. As they walked back toward the city, Lyra realized that something fundamental had changed within her. She no longer saw her scars as marks of shame. They were symbols of endurance, proof that she had survived, learned, and grown stronger. And Elias had shown her that strength was not only in survival, but in compassion, courage, and the ability to stand up for what was right. The city loomed ahead, its crystal towers gleaming in the morning sun. The citizens watched as Lyra and Elias approached, their presence commanding attention. Whispers spread quickly, and many who had once judged her now looked with curiosity, even admiration. Lyra felt a quiet sense of hope. She knew that prejudice and fear would not disappear overnight, but the first cracks were appearing in the walls of judgment. The story of the human and the alien who had survived the forest storm would not be forgotten. Elias turned to her, offering his hand. "Shall we face whatever comes next together?" he asked. Lyra took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength it offered. "Yes," she said, "together." And as they stepped forward into the city, a sense of purpose and courage filled her. The storm had tested them, shaped them, and prepared them for the challenges ahead. Whatever lay in the future, they would face it side by side, proving that understanding, empathy, and courage could overcome fear and prejudice. The city of Zephyros shone like a crystal crown under the twin suns, the towers gleaming with gold and silver light. After the forest storm, news of Lyra and Elias's survival spread quickly. Citizens whispered in awe about the alien woman with scars and the human who had faced the storm by her side. Curiosity replaced much of the fear and judgment that had once shadowed Lyra. Lyra walked through the streets with Elias beside her. People stared, some still uncertain, but many looked with admiration. Children peeked from behind crystal pillars, and even adults who had once avoided her now nodded in respect. For the first time, Lyra felt that her presence mattered, not because of perfection, but because of courage and integrity. "Do you think they will ever truly accept me?" she asked quietly, looking up at Elias. Elias smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Acceptance is a journey," he said, "but respect is earned. You have earned it today, Lyra. You have shown strength, kindness, and courage. That will last longer than fear or prejudice." Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. The scars on her arms and face, once a source of shame, now felt like proof of resilience, symbols of survival and bravery. She walked a little taller, carrying herself with quiet pride. At the academy, a special assembly had been called. The council gathered in the grand crystal hall, the citizens lining the walls, all eyes fixed on Lyra and Elias. The lead official who had challenged her during the forest storm stepped forward. "Lyra," he began, his voice calm but firm, "you have faced what many believed impossible. You have shown courage, intelligence, and compassion, and this human, Elias, has demonstrated respect for our world and strength of character. It is clear that fear and prejudice have no place here." Whispers filled the hall. Some council members exchanged uncertain glances, while others nodded slowly. Lyra felt a wave of relief, yet she kept her posture steady. The lead official continued, "Therefore, we recognize Lyra not only for her contributions to science, but for her courage and character. We acknowledge Elias as a friend of Zephyros, a being who has shown that strength and honor are not defined by appearances, species, or history, but by action, understanding, and courage." Applause echoed through the crystal hall. Lyra's heart swelled with pride. The recognition was not for beauty, perfection, or conformity. It was for what truly mattered: courage, empathy, and integrity. She glanced at Elias, who smiled warmly. After the ceremony, they walked together through the city streets, now buzzing with a sense of wonder. Citizens approached asking questions, offering greetings and sharing stories of how they had once feared the unknown but now admired the courage that Lyra and Elias had shown. Lyra stopped near a small park of glowing flora and turned to Elias. "I never thought my scars would be seen as anything but shameful," she said softly. "Now they feel different." Elias looked at her closely, his amber eyes warm. "They are not shameful. They are proof of your strength, your resilience. They tell a story of survival, of courage, and of a heart that never gave up. That story inspires others. That is far more important than any outward perfection." Lyra's chest swelled with emotion. "Thank you, Elias," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for showing me that I can be proud of who I am. For showing me that strength is not about appearances, but about the courage to care, to act, and to stand up for what is right." Elias reached out, gently taking her hand. "And thank you, Lyra," he replied, "for teaching me about your world, for trusting me, and for showing me what it means to be truly brave." As the days passed, life on Zephyros began to change. Citizens who had once avoided the outer forests now ventured there, exploring and learning. The academy revised its rules about outsiders, welcoming visitors who showed respect and curiosity rather than fear. Lyra's work in crystal research gained recognition, and she was invited to lead a special program to teach collaboration between humans and aliens. Even children, who had once stared and pointed at her scars in fear, now approached her with curiosity and admiration. They asked her about her experiments, her adventures in the forest, and how she had survived the forest storm. Lyra smiled at each question, telling her stories honestly, emphasizing the lessons she had learned. Courage is not the absence of fear. Strength is not in appearances, and understanding is more powerful than judgment. One evening, Lyra and Elias sat atop a hill overlooking the crystal city. The twin suns setting in a breathtaking display of gold and blue, the city glimmered below them, alive and vibrant, reflecting their shared journey. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had never met?" Elias asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Lyra thought for a moment. "I would still be alive," she said, "but I would not know what it feels like to be truly seen, truly understood. I would not have discovered courage in the same way, or realized that strength comes in many forms." Elias nodded, his hand still holding hers. "Then meeting was meant to be," he said simply. "Not by chance, but by purpose. We were meant to learn from each other, and to show others the value of compassion, courage, and understanding." Lyra looked at him, her heart full. "Yes," she said softly, "and together we will continue to do so." As night fell, the city of Zephyros sparkled beneath them. The citizens below began to speak differently, treating one another with more patience, curiosity, and kindness. The story of Lyra and Elias, the alien with scars and the human who saw her true strength, became a symbol of hope, courage, and understanding across the planet. Lyra knew that life would still hold challenges, that prejudice and fear would not vanish entirely, but she also knew that her scars, once a mark of shame, were now a testament to resilience, empathy, and courage. She had faced rejection, danger, and doubt, yet had emerged stronger and more confident. Elias squeezed her hand gently, drawing her attention from the glittering city. "Your people see your strength now," he said. "And you see it too in yourself. That is the greatest victory of all." Lyra nodded, tears of quiet joy in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "It is." They stood together hand in hand, looking out over Zephyros, their hearts aligned in hope and determination. The bond they had formed through trials, challenges, and understanding had grown unbreakable. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were friends, partners, and symbols of what it meant to face life with courage, compassion, and integrity. In the quiet of the night, the twin moons reflected their light on the crystal towers, casting shimmering patterns across the city. Lyra traced the outline of her scars with her fingertips, feeling their weight differently now. They were not marks of shame or weakness. They were a map of survival, a story of endurance, and a symbol of transformation. Elias leaned close, his voice soft but strong. "Shall we step forward together, Lyra? Into the future, and whatever challenges await?" Lyra smiled, looking at the stars reflected in the crystalline city below. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and full of certainty. "Together." And so, Lyra and Elias walked back into the city hand in hand. Their presence no longer inspired fear or doubt, but admiration and hope. The story of the alien with scars and the human who saw her true strength spread throughout Zephyros, inspiring others to look beyond appearances, to value courage and compassion, and to believe that understanding could overcome prejudice. For Lyra, the journey had been more than survival. It had been transformation. She had learned to see herself not through the eyes of judgment, but through the eyes of courage, compassion, and empathy. She had learned that scars could tell a story of strength rather than shame, and with Elias by her side, she knew that together, they could face any challenge, change minds, and inspire hearts. As the twin moons rose fully in the night sky, casting their soft glow across the city, Lyra and Elias stood atop the hill once more, looking toward the future. The wind whispered through the crystal trees, carrying with it a promise that courage, understanding, and compassion were stronger than fear, and that even the deepest scars could shine as symbols of strength and hope. And so, under the light of Zephyros's twin moons, the alien with scars and the human who had kissed them walked forward together, ready to face whatever the universe would bring, leaving behind a legacy of courage, friendship, and the power of seeing true strength in one another.